Neocoma. So, where are we in the relationship landscape of the Black Western world, specifically brothers and sisters in America? I sit here in the rain after talking to clients yesterday, reflecting on our service of the Acoma House Initiative, counseling and consulting firm over the last 18 years. The creation of Acoma Day, the cultural alternative to Valentine's Day, 25 years. And I'm thinking about what has gotten better and what has gotten worse. One thing that I think that has definitely gotten better is that both men and women are communicating their thoughts, feelings, and opinions to one another. We've gone through a couple of different periods in our history as Black people where that wasn't the case. Unfortunately, we are an extremely traumatized people. So oftentimes what's coming out is just a significant amount of trauma, right? And unfortunately, one of the greatest reflections of that trauma is projection. So projection is when you have an issue or you feel a hurt or pain, and rather than take responsibility for your part in what causes that pain or hurt, you blame someone else as if they have the problem, and oftentimes they do in this sense, or that they are the cause of the problem. And so to put it, simply, in colloquial terms, it's the gender wars, right? So we're having gender war, like over the last, like 12 years, maybe. But it's been at a fever pitch over the last 7 years. So we're in 2026, Greco-Roman. So I would say probably from 2019 to now, the gender war has been insane, right? But overall, as a group of people, we haven't gotten any better. Statistically, our marriage rates are down. Our psychological satisfaction is lesser. Our frustration has risen. And our disdain for one another is widening, broadening, deepening. And so we're at a critical impasse. We must understand the role that culture plays in relationships. Yes, this is not in pop culture. Yes, all of the talking heads, most of them who are younger people who don't really have a cultural analysis, are not talking about. Also, most of the people talking about relationships, ironically, are not married themselves, which is very, very dangerous, because you're talking about a thing that you've either never experienced or you experienced briefly, albeit unsuccessfully. So those are not the people that you want to talk to about achieving success in something as vital as marriage. For marriage is the seed of family. Family is the seed of community. Community is the seed of nation. And nation is the seed of world influence, right? So even though our number one export is entertainment, sport, and play, we are famous and coveted as a group for our countless innovations and inventions, right? But we ain't really admired in terms of our love, respect, and honor of self and our divine reflections, which is man's divine reflection is woman and woman's divine reflection is man. So when I say divine, I'm saying that from a cultural standpoint, meaning that from the seed origin, from the spiritual origin. Divine means the unassailable beginning, right? The beginning that has no birth record. That's divinity, right? So that's where we at, right? And it's a lot of problems that are happening, right? First of all, we won't admit publicly how much we love and need one another. I think that if we would just popularize this as a standard, so much would change. If the norm in the norm in the airspace was black men saying that we love and need black women, and black women saying we love and need black men, so much would change about the succeeding conversation after that, right? So if we started with that, so much would change, because what we're actually seeing is all the reasons why it's hard to get along, all the reasons why there's something wrong with each other. And yes, there's something wrong with us, right? There's something wrong with us collectively because our culture has been tremendously fractured. And so we're currently seeing a black man and a black woman who has been nurtured into dysfunction, but they are not really necessarily in their nature at all. So it's hard for us to even glean really what a natural black man and natural black woman is, because we've been so damaged by the Ma'afa experience that we're going through. But this experience was always meant to end. And despite what you believe spiritually or progressively in terms of social cycles or whatever, however you measure reality, everyone could feel that we're coming to a fever pitch. We're coming to an epoch. We're coming to a pinnacle point where then some new beginning must start, or we must come back to the origin. And so, like I said, if you believe in the beginning, so shall it be in the end, or if you have any understanding scientifically about energetic cycles and how they rise, plateau, and then descent, or whatever is your analysis of what's happening, you don't know what's going on. You almost instinctively feel like something got to give, right? Something got to change in this dynamic. And we're coming to a point where we're 8 out of 10 unmated. We're saying the most horrible things about each other. And dig, we got some real problems. A lot of stuff that black men are saying about black women is true. A lot of stuff that black women are saying about black men is true. Neither one speaks a total truth, because both have an understanding and a perception of each other that's nurtured by our enemies. And that's very dangerous, because when your enemy paints your self-image and your enemy paints your divine reflections image, it won't be positive. And that's what we have to understand. The unseen hand that's at play. People who don't have a thorough analysis want to always discount this because it's something they can't deal with. It's something they don't understand, and it's out of the wheelhouse of their skill set or analysis. So they try to pretend that it's not a thing. But look, black relationships have been suffering for well over 100 years, well over 200 years, well over the last several hundred years. And the common denominator is that it takes culture to build a sustainable relationship. And everybody knows, even those of us that defend that, hip hop is a culture, this is a culture, that is a culture, everybody knows that we are not operating in a functional culture. And culture is a group value system that emanates from the nature of the members, right? So it comes from our nature. There's vestiges of the culture that we can see in art and music and dance, etc. But where it counts most is our inability to have relational success. like brother to brother, sister to sister, brother to sister, adult to child, elder to teen, etc., right? We jacked up. We don't have balance. We don't have appropriate understanding of our role and our function within the group dynamic. And you've heard it 1,000 times. We're the only people that have this problem. Everyone else has unique and distinct problems, sure, but they don't have an identity problem like we do. And we would naturally have an identity problem. You know, my sister is a psychologist, and she says all the time, you know, as my wife says all the time, actually, but my sister concurs, the problems we have are the natural problems that come from people who've been through what we've been through. We've been through something that no other group of people have gone through. And I'm not talking about the trauma Olympics saying that just people on the western shores of America, the islands, Canada, and the Americas have it. Continental Africans, whether we find black people in India, whether we find black people in Australia, China, wherever we find them, you're going through a relentless, nonstop cultural assault that is jacking up your ability to relate to yourself, thereby everybody, including your divine counterpart. And this is problematic because we want love. We want to restore ourselves. And we've tried many things thus far. We've tried money, which is important, but not nearly it. We've tried politics, which is important, but not nearly it. We've tried merely education and information, which is important, but not nearly it. We have to master relationships. We have to look at each other with the best thought in mind. We have to look at each other and see ourselves in each other. So we speak to that self-existence in each other with love, with compassion, and that's a starting point for us to begin to rebuild our culture. We have to see, when we see a black person, it's instantaneous love. Now, this doesn't mean that we don't have standards. This doesn't mean that we don't have boundaries, because many of us are sick and we are in a flux of destructive behavior. So you have to protect yourself oftentimes, and you have to have an appropriate way to vet, crazy black folks that you come in contact with. However, you should see black people as an extension of yourself. But what we try to do too often as a projection technique is to delineate that we are different than all the black people that we see. Somehow we're the exception. And this often happens when you present the rule to black people about relationships. They want to tell you that they are the exception. I generally don't believe that, but let's just say you are the exception. Okay, good for you. Now, the rest of us are the rule. So just like in this society, majority rules. We're not dealing with those unicorn exceptions. We're dealing with the mule, who is the rule, right? For an animal farm metaphor, right? We're dealing with the rule, right? The rule is we have deeply stoked self-hatred, and we have dysfunctional skill sets that allow us to be harmful, hurtful, and destructive to one another. Now, the conundrum is, we all want love. And everywhere we go, we're getting mistreated by everyone, including ourselves a lot of times. But the one thing we know instinctively, intuitively, and even unconsciously, that the reason that our brothers and sisters are being mistreated, as are we, is because of what we have in common. And that's our racial phenotypic manifestation, the way we appear in the world, because we black, whether we light, bright, damn near white, black, all the way to blue, black, midnight, triple stage darkness black. This is the dynamic. This is the common denominator that we share that's making us have a similar experience in education, entertainment, economics, fashion, food, labor law, politics, religion, sex, and war, right? And health. These are the 12 areas of human interaction, and we're experiencing the same thing. If you're black in general, it's hell. And from the lightest black, almost white, to the dark midnight black, there's varying levels of manipulation. And I'm not in the trauma Olympics to say who's being hurt more. You know, obviously the way this system, this racist system is set up, the darker you are, the greater threat you are to genetically annihilate skin whiteness. However, lights are manipulated, and also they receive animus from both sides of the coin. Look, black men and women are each other. So this is something we say all the time at the Acoma House Initiative. If I have a quarter and I turn it from heads to tails, the view of that quarter is very different, but the value never changes. And this is what we have with black men and women. Listen, y'all, we are each other, and we are going to need each other to raise our value. There is no glory in trying to separate ourselves from the group. Whoever you think is the highest of the high to the lowest of the low, we are the same. Black men and black women, we are the same. Light and dark, we are the same. Young and old, we are the same. Rich and poor, we are the same. We are each other. So love is a perpetual consciousness that's characterized by a deep emotional affinity to understand and unify with one another, right? So we need to begin to change our psychology around the way we see self and the way we see each other, right? And this is something that's not a new statement. You know, many great people, greater than I, greater than Nawasha, have come before us for thousands of years and said this, but this is the thing that is not talked about in the so-called relationship space. And I'm reluctant to call it relationship space because from A to Z, most of the people who get the most attention and who are lauded as being, you know, great in this space, leaders in this space, whether they be men or women, their real expertise is highlighting dysfunction. Their expertise is not in unifying. And if you are a person who can highlight or very eloquently articulate what's wrong, are you really a person that is helping relationships? Identifying problems has its importance. It's very important. But we have one single problem that manifests in 12 different ways. We don't have 12 problems. We don't have 20, and we don't have 100. We have one problem. We don't have agency. We don't have autonomy. We don't have cultural identity independence. We are not thinking, speaking, and acting from our self-generated self-love concept. We are reacting to someone else's thought, speech, and action that's aggressed upon us, and we are resisting an oppression that we don't talk about but feel in all 12 areas of human interaction. So now when those two people who want love and who are deserving of love, intimate love, come together, there is a lot of difficulties if we don't understand we have one problem. If we can distill things down to the one problem, then we can address the one problem and solve many splintering angles at once. If we approach it from the splintering angles, we could get caught up, lost, or misdirected and never see the one problem that produces all the splinters. So this is just a thought. We need to unify. It's not an original thought. It's been the case for since we've been in this ma'afa. So I'm not proposing it that is so grandiose and original, but the profundity of it comes from the realization that it's a thought, speech, and action. Social media is not making things worse. Social media is revealing how bad things are. Us talking to each other and having more access to each other doesn't make our problem worse. What it does is really illustrate repeatedly what our problem is. We have a self-hatred, we have a misidentification, we have an identity problem, and we have a lack of skill when it comes to dealing with self and kind. And this is what we're offering as solutions. We have solutions. We believe at the Akoma House Initiative that we must develop skill. We must have 3 pillars of psychological reparation, the healing of our individual and collective traumas, because some of our individual traumas are unique, but our overarching cultural traumas are similar. So we must have psychological repair. That is the first pillar. The second pillar is, and we do that through culturally based counseling. The second pillar is relationship education. Men and women who have existed in a fractured culture for easily 500 years, but, technically 6,000 years, have lost many of the skills that it takes to build a honest, healthy, happy relationship, right? We've lost that. And so we must relearn the technical, practical skills, not just say communicate better, but teach communication techniques, not just say resolve conflicts amicably, but teach the techniques that help us do that. Not just say we got to harmonize styles and compromise, but teach psychologically the belief systems that we must nurture, but also the practical, actual, measurable techniques that help us harmonize styles. And we have to become excellent at communication so that we're effective, efficient, and elegant in our speech and our transference of ideas with one another. So our second pillar is relationship education. What we call the art and science of Black love culture. The art is the philosophical, it's the abstraction, it's the feminine energy, and the science is the methodological, practical techniques. We both need them both as men and women, boys and girls, elders and youth, but we find that men really need the art. The science kind of comes natural to them, whether it's dysfunctional or functional. We find that women really need the science. The arts comes natural to them, whether it's functional or dysfunctional, right? So we need the art and science, and that's the second pillar, relationship education, what we call the art and science, or what we call the why and how of Black love culture. And then the third thing that we need is cultural initiation. We must be re-nurtured into our nature, because the way we're being nurtured now is to be the footstool of those that oppress us. In other words, we become the euphemistic term, which I don't typically use. I don't really like it, but for the sake of understanding, we become our own worst enemies, meaning that, you're being controlled almost remote controlly with predetermined outcomes, right? So if you're familiar with The Miseducation of the Negro book by Carter G. Woodson, the founder of Negro History Week, which became Black History Month in Black America, in America proper, right? He's talking about on the back cover of the book, and if you look at the front cover of the book, you see a beautiful Black woman with a lock on her brain, right? Saying that if you control a person well enough and you nurture and condition their miseducation well enough, when you let them go, they do things that destroy themselves. You don't need to physically control them. You give them money, they destroy themselves. You give them information, they destroy themselves. Anything you give them, even if you gave them something that was to their benefit, because of their nurturing, they will make it to their detriment. And so our third pillar is cultural initiation. And to put that short, it's many layers to that. But to put it short on a basic level, it is the re-nurturing of your nature. Who are you in your nature? Who are you? Your nature is predetermined before you even at conception, right? Before you even came into the physical world that we know, your nature is encoded. It's like a seed, right? So we say in certain cultural circles, we call our children seeds because as men, especially the men I know, talk like that because that's the seed of life that we gave to our women. They then nurtured it and then produced a human being. But the human being, if that human being grows to be 1,000 years old, they will never be more than what was in that seed. It's just like a seed in nature. You're not evolving past your beginning as what's taught. You're just manifesting what was always in you. So when you plant a seed and it becomes a lemon tree or a mango tree, right? Everything that it becomes and even how it reproduces itself for eternity was always in the first seed. And sisters, you know this, at birth, you not only have all of your eggs, but you have your mother's, grandmother's, great-grandmother's eggs, and you have your great-grandchildren's eggs in you when you're born. And so this is the same concept, as above, so below. This is what we must get back to. So these three pillars that we offer at the Acoma House Initiative, number one, psychological reparation is the healing. We use cultural counseling to do that. Relationship education, number two, we use culturally based relationship coaching, the art and science of Black love culture to teach that. And then cultural initiation, the reclaiming, the re-nurturing of your true nature. We use cultural-based rituals and lessons from the diaspora that indigenous Black culture that predate the Western world. This is what we offer. This is what makes us distinct and unique at the Acoma House Initiative. If you are interested in mastering high-level relationships that are authentically Black, that are honest, that are healthy, that are happy, that are harmonious, then I think that we have something to offer for you. And our track record over these last 25 years working with Black singles and couples in 16 countries around the world suggests that we're doing something right. No one has all the answers, but we have a lot of seeds. We have a lot of tools. Some of them are thoughts and concepts, but most of them are practical. So we are clinical therapists. We both hold master degrees in counseling and human services, but we're not fans of so-called traditional counseling because although it's very cathartic, and although there are amazing counselors that I meet all the time, therapists around the country, the problem with a lot of them is they use baseless terms like cultural competency and things like that that don't really speak to cultural initiation. Those terms were really born out of lawsuits that white people were going through. And so they make up terms that suggest it's still centered around whiteness. It's about white people or the people that they train looking at each other, looking at other groups of people from a place of equality. But it's superficial and it's condescending at best. When you have a African paradigm, when you have Black indigenous culture as your center, you don't have to come up with terms like cultural competency because you're the genesis of everyone. So what you're saying is that I'm using not just root knowledge, but seed knowledge, the thing that produced everyone. And it is a true catch-all, but it is met with a lot of vitriol because it it harkens to Black empowerment. And true Black empowerment means that it puts Blackness at the center of everything. So there is no equality in that. Everybody didn't come first. One thing came first. Everyone doesn't have the highest vibration. One thing has the highest vibration because energy goes from high to low, right? So we understand this instinctively and intuitively, but socially, because we fear the power of our oppressors, we try to talk in a different way. And many of my beautiful colleagues that have been educated in these institutions of higher learning, it goes without saying. The models, the psychological centers of these, therapeutic models that we're using, whether it's Freud, is Skinner, is Jung, is whoever it is that you're using, cognitive behavioral, rational emotive, whatever kind of therapeutic model you're using is centered around whiteness. But at the Acoma House Initiative, we created our own model. And it is a combination of strategic intervention, which was presented to the world by white people, but within it is a lot of Black indigenous thought. And it's paired with strategic intervention along with cultural maintenance therapy or cultural mastery techniques that we spell with a K. So we call it KMT or KIMIT for cultural associative impact, right? So this is what we need, Black people. And we cannot rise as a people until we can master our intimate relationships. We now, Black people in the Western world, are the most unmated people in history. Black women will have you believe that's Black men's fault. That's only partially right. Black men will have you believe that's Black women's fault. That's only partially right. And very few of us are talking about the true source of our problem. We have been forcibly removed from our cultural nature. It is not until we replace our cultural nature that, by the way, we've been also educated and trained to fear, disdain, or believe is substandard to the norm, which we say is, we don't say it out loud, but subconsciously we understand it to be whiteness. So I hear a lot of so-called educated college people, advanced degrees like we got, saying this and that is pseudo this and pseudo that. And I always ask them, if the term pseudo something exists, what is the standard? And they clam up. They don't say it because what we all know that is if Blackness or Black psychological, spiritual, or therapeutic thought is pseudo, then that suggests that something is a more correct standard. What is that then? We know what that is, right? So I'm offering you the chance to really think and experience on a deeper level the psychological reparation, the relationship education, and the cultural initiation that will change the quality of your relationship and not make you more individualistic or the best of the best. You're already that because you're unique, but your value is extremely diminished if you're not part of a group. And we are a part of a group by birth, whether we like it or not. So the best thing, the smartest thing for us to do is embrace that group, look at that group critically, see what our strengths and weaknesses are, and address and rebalance them accordingly, right? That's what we offer in that Tacoma House Initiative. So if you with that, if you interested in that, if you interested in mastering your relationship, if you're truly interested in not being one of the 8 out of 10 of us that are never going to mate in this particular time or in your lifetime for a lot of us, and you want to be one of the other 2 out of 8, and you really want to be one of the 1 out of 8, because 8 out of 10 of us are unmated. But then 2 are mated, and one of them are together for utility, whether it's loneliness, a constant sex partner, children, financial reasons, etc. In other words, they're not thriving. They're together, but they're not thriving. 1 out of 10 of us is actually thriving. And if you want to learn the skills that put you in that demographic so that you can then teach to the people in your influence, click the link that's around this video and let's talk about how you can do that. We have something for you only if you're serious and you're committed to the art and science of Black love culture. So, as always, I'm greeting you in peace and the universal words of the art and science of Black love culture and saying, Ni Koma.